If you know, you know. 13 years. So in this video, you're going to see a Ferrari Enzo back in 2012 that had a light restoration, sympathetic restoration, an improvement to the finish, a little bit of bespoke colour changing, and wasn't actually in for that package. It was actually in for a valet. Stay tuned and all will be explained why. So here you can see on camera using two wash mitts, two very plush lamb's wool wash mitts from the Dodo Juice detailing range. This is back in 2012, and being as careful as I possibly can to the paint finish, and let me explain why. The car came to me for what we would call a high-end valet possible enhancement detail, meaning the paintwork was described as very good condition, been detailed previously not that long ago, but the client wanted the engine bay, the door shuts, the suspension, the underneath, and all the interior cleaned as good as possible. With my facility having a ramp back in 2012, a lot of detailers didn't, so the idea was to address all the underneath because the paint was quite good, stroke perfect. We'll get back to that in a moment. So as you can see here, memory serves me well. I remember clearly and vividly using mostly Bill Hamber Surfex HD for the degreasing. I would have also used all-purpose cleaners. There would have been multiple rinsing stages between each of the chemical products. That there would have been an all-purpose cleaner sprayed on, left to dwell. As you can see, that's what I'm doing there now on the engine cover. And sometimes, as you can see, a microfiber cloth is easier and better than using a brush. It was just different processes really. Now, what I didn't know is what you're going to see in this video coming up was that after all this very delicate cleaning and special touches everywhere, sympathetic cleaning and brushing, that once the vehicle was put indoors and inspected properly on a ramp, and yes, I've been lifting cars for detailing since 2008, so I always found the best way to ever detail a car to perfection was to obviously raise it to eye line. Then you get to do all the areas that you don't normally see that easily when you're standing, especially on a low car like the Enzo. So at this period, while washing this car, I was oblivious to what was about to happen. On inspection, there was obviously a lot more swirls than I imagined. Smart repairs, as you can see. Bad defects. There was sanding marks. Stone chips. And I was like, hang on a minute. This client says to me, it's in perfect paint. So as you can see, this is far more than detailing. Basically, long story, very short, discussed with the client. The car's in a little bit of a used condition, could do with a sympathetic light restoration. So that's why we started to strip off and inspect the car. Now, as you can see underneath the film, and look at the condition of that film, was horrendous swirls and buffer lines, but also how bad the film was back in 2012. So you're now going to see on camera is a lot of stripping down and rubbing down, and as you can see there, can you see the pattern and weave? And yes, this could be classed as sacrilege, that as you sand and prep and repair cracks such as this and sand down flat the original paint, you technically remove the weave look from this Enzo, which we discussed with the client in a lot of detail. You can imagine how difficult, tricky the conversations are with the pros and cons of creating perfect paint on a car that would normally not have perfect paint. Customer trusted me, so the rest really was just a matter of getting the car done. So what you can see here is obviously low impact areas where it's had a lot of stone chips. We've used the original paint where it was good and sound and just sanded that down and keyed it. Then obviously it's had, you can see a colouring process there. That's actually base coat going on now. and when it dries you can see it going wet, and when it dries you can actually start to see it goes matte again. So you can see on the top surface there it hasn't been applied any paint yet, it's matte. So it goes on to the side sheen. This is a water-based colour coat, and as it dries out it goes matte. And clearly you couldn't leave a car like this if you didn't realise it's a two-stage application. So base colour coat will then need clear coat over the top. So what we did do with this vehicle is this actually what we call a double visit. So there is the matte base coat as it's drying before the lacquer process. So what did I mean by double visit? So as you're spraying the clear coat on, that there is what we call one visit. You're putting enough clear coat on to give you a certain thickness build of clear coat, and the right amount so that it outgasses, cross links, doesn't blister, doesn't run, doesn't sag, and has a good longevity. But for the ultimate finish and the best longevity, you would technically, after spraying this with clear coat, bake the car, allow it to outgas and settle, rub it down and re-clear coat it. So then you're putting new clear coat over the original clear coat that you've just sprayed on a flatter finish. This allows you to get a sort of better depth of glass, clarity and flatness. So the wheels, as you can see there, the wheels were stripped. Interesting centre lock wheels, obviously way back 2010, 11, 12 when this car was done, but obviously the car was made in much earlier than that. You know, not had any cars with centre lock wheels then. So these wheels went through a different colour process. It's called a shadow chrome process. So you can see here it was a black colour first that goes on slightly satin, and then there's a chrome finish sprayed across the face. There you go, a chrome finish, which is a wet chrome with the paint. You can see it's a different spray gun, it's not powder coat, and it's down to the person spraying that gives you this effect, and it has a beautiful two-tone effect. So here's what I said about having two visits of clear coat that gives you this stunning finish. It's still going to be orange peely, still going to have a bit of wobbles, but there's so much clear coat on there now, and it's such a wet finish that it gives you plenty to play with when you come to sanding down, blocking it flat, giving the ultimate finish. As you see with this masking here, which is the classic masking of the inner panels of any Ferrari, classic Ferrari, was always satin matte black. How we've masked absolutely precisely, dead straight, which is not how the factory paint whatsoever. That is actually soft edge coming off there. Interesting little fact that this car, I still remember it vividly, we triple masked this car to make sure there was zero overspray into any areas of the wheel wells, interior. So I said about the sanding process. This is the old-fashioned way, very labour intensive, but I still say the ultimate best way of sanding a car to remove orange peel. As you can see, they like leopard print peaks and troughs. So this particular vehicle would not have had terrible orange peel compared to some vehicles that are painted because of the extra layering. There's a much younger version of me and currently sitting there looking at myself, which is very odd. But look, back to the car. So I'd be sanding with a block and by hand in different grades. On this particular car, it would have been 1,500, then it would have been 2,000 grit. This would be the 3M grade of paper, soap and water, block, small amount of soap. And as you can see, you're starting to sand and get a flat finish. Now, I would have then stepped up into finer grades. That's not finer grades there. You can actually see there, that's still the partial 1,500 grit. But even in the reflections, you can see if you get the angle right, it's a much flatter finish. Which, as I said, does that mean this car's going to be worse, devalued? Imagine having the responsibility of putting all of this car back together or stripping it in the first place. Random facts, I remember the door cards back in 2012 when I was going to remove the door cards to take the car apart. They were something like £12,000–13,000 each. The rear engine clam that's missing from this shot, roughly I believe was £30,000 or £33,000. So after all the sanding stages was done, this is back obviously a long time ago when mini machines weren't around and the good old DAs weren't even really out. It was very unpopular. So it was rotary, wall pads, different size backing plates and foam. And this is how we had to deal with intricate areas in the old days. Be ingenious, extension poles, using different size backing plates for the different size pads. The days when you only really had a rotary, and nowadays the silly things that I've said about if you use a DA, you're not a detailer. A bit silly, because you commonly see me using a DA more often than a rotary now, but I'm perfectly at home with a rotary. Gives you an example of a time lapse of polishing back sanding. As you can see, that would be hand sanding. I actually very easy to sand and very easy to polish with a little bit of know-how. This is always an interesting area for me. Very tricky to get down in there. You can see how close I'm having to run with the backing plate up to the other edge and then into these smaller areas. We're so spoilt now in 2025. We've got so many different pads and machines and mini machines now. In these days, it was a much harder task to get into these intricate areas, especially areas like those. Obviously, we wanted to make the very best possible finish results for the customer. So there was a lot of polishing of the carbon. That was a bit of it's not really perfect finish. It's engine bay carbon. It's semi-gloss, bit satin matte, so we could improve it massively. And of course, you have to do the floor, don't you, of this car. I mean, you never get to see underneath you normally. And all the interior was carbon. Coming up in a moment, yes, here it is. That was in the days when that was the smallest pad you could ever get. That's the shift lights. Then you imagine trying to polish down in the floor, the interior. There was literally nothing was untouched on this vehicle to give us the best possible results. Still remember it very vividly. Those are the door cards I said that are a crazy amount of money. So you imagine the responsibility after all that perfection of getting the car perfectly flat. You can see in this shot here, then you have to put the car back together. That's stressful. That's why I had my gloves on. I'm trying not to mark any of the paint. Imagine, I mean, those wheels are actually quite light. I mean, I could lift them very easy, but yeah, there's a lot of careful putting back together. And look, this is literally us putting on ceramic coatings, ceramic nano coatings. This is a very early days. I believe this will be, yes, I'm correct, C1, the first ever version of G-Technic C1. Crystal Serum Ultra and Crystal Serum wasn't released. So it's how all that C1 all over the wheels and the bodywork. You may even see we put even paper mats underneath that wheel, new mats, to get no dust and debris anywhere. This was like trying to keep as surgically clean as possible. Engine bay coated as well. If it could be coated, we coated it. Little caveat here, this is sometimes quite poor quality footage because this was done on a digital SLR back on a very cheap camera. This, by the way, is G1. It's G1 coating for the glass. But as I say, this is back a long time ago before technology had got better with camera equipment. I mean, back then, the way to really take a video, you was using a camcorder back at this time. And this is the first ever EXO, the first ever version of EXO that came out, that, if you remember well, could only be applied at temperatures above 20 degrees C, as it never cured. You could really get to see the finish. And then, of course, the obligatory water beading shot, water repellent shot. This is literally the first ever versions of the first ever ceramic nano coatings from G-Technic. We're now at multiple versions. I mean, Enzo's now V5, version 5. So a quick little montage of how beautiful the car is, and you notice the race track there. We'll get back to that in a moment. Stunning car. I just was so honoured and privileged to work on such a vehicle. Is this a job? Back then, obviously, just, you know, it's not a job. I didn't talk it as a job, but you can see how great the finish is. Again, camera equipment wasn't that great back then. So, look, this is why that car was in the condition it was. The owner regularly uses this for track days, charity rides, and there's, fortunate for me, was lucky to have a passenger ride in the actual car. You can imagine as we're going down the straight and coming up behind cars and the noise of the stones flicking in the wheel arches, I didn't know if to be blown away and happy that the car's being used in the way it should be and driven clearly well until its limit, because it made other supercars of its time look very, very slow, or cry that he's using it so well. It was a love-hate experience, but an experience I will never forget. Imagine going around a Top Gear test track as a passenger ride in the Ferrari Enzo that you had for 6 months and a light restoration on. Let's jump to 2019 when the car returned to us. It's been used a lot, it's got some battle scars, it's been enjoyed, and it's a little bit dirty. So we needed to get busy with giving it a good thorough clean. As you can see how dusty and dirty it is, a little bit marred from washing. So it was time to give it a very good, careful, sympathetic wash to evaluate the condition of the car. Interesting, you can see how well the G10X ceramic nano coatings are still working after many, many years. The performance is perfect, really performing exceptionally well. There was no real dead, dull patches whatsoever. The slickness here washing was insane, and that's one of the bigger benefits of these latest technology ceramic nano coatings. You'll be able to notice there that there's a steam, that was hot water. I prefer to always use hot water where I can for washing a vehicle. Carrying out a very intensive rinse for two reasons. It really removes any chemicals left from the shampoo, and obviously you can see here how well this is working. It's called an open hose, where you can literally dry the car with water. Yes, you dry the car with water. You use an open hose at a low speed, low volume, and literally run the hose down the vehicle, and it removes most of the water from the surface, meaning it's much easier to dry. So a much easier process to dry, which I still don't see many people adopting often when they wash their car. So the car was inside. We obviously have moved way forward now with a later version of Enzo, so a little top up was applied to all the surfaces that didn't need any sort of maintenance, correction, enhancement. But there are some parts of the car, the top surfaces there where it's got the most dust settled on, that we did do a little bit of polishing, which did mean obviously reapplying ceramic coatings. So as you can see here, I'm using a dual latch machine, a microfiber pad, and we're doing a very light cut to some of the top surfaces of the vehicle where it's got a little bit of wash marring and a little bit of marks. Wasn't a huge correction, didn't need much. Just a small sympathetic sort of medium cut and refining. That's us being busy trying to buff off the residue of what was now crystal serum. We've really stepped up the game. Obviously we're on to newer versions of all these ceramic coatings, but this is the latest technology from G-Technic at the time. You may be able to notice here that the way we're applying and buffing, so we don't get any join lines, there's a continuous movement. One person's following another person, unless you've got a straight edge like that wing there. Ready for the finish shots? So, which one of these would you choose? Not the car, the colour. Which colour? We were all debated over which is the nicest red.
That's tricky. This one, I think, this one's slightly brighter.
Vibrant. Would you say? Yeah.
Vibrant, exactly that. This one for me, ever so slightly darker.
We call that muddy, milky.
Oh right, really?
Milky
okay.
Ute, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
there we go. So I think I'd have to choose 3x5 colour.
Okay. So that one's the colour name is Rosso Corsa.
Okay, so what's that one then if it's not? I thought an Enzo would be Rosso Corsa as well.
They're both.
So they're both, but they're not identical shades?
No, so...
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and in the future stay tuned for plenty of supercar, hypercar content coming. Thank you very much and goodbye.